Sharon Grimes is here this morning, and Sharon lost a brother this week. We want to lift up Sharon's family. There'll be a celebration of his life on the 13th of August over in Hawthorne. Also, Laura DeVos is back in the hospital at Capital Regional, and I'm certain she will appreciate your prayers. She is experiencing some complications that have to do with heart condition and a blood clot. Would you please lift up Don and Laura Bazell, John and Shirley Trotman. John is at Westminster Oaks Rehabilitation on the second floor of the health center, and he is making some progress, but he's also itching to go home. So lift them up if you would. Some great news. William and Sally Benjamin remain out in Omaha, Nebraska. They went there initially for a convention for the American Association of the Blind, and on the day they were supposed to come back to Tallahassee, William was somewhat unresponsive. Since that time, he has been in the ICU. He's now in a regular room, but this week he made significant progress in that they took the feeding tube out. He's able to eat. He's getting his strength back. He's sitting up in a chair, and their goal is to get him strong enough for him to be able to make the trip back to Tallahassee. And we're also grateful for a niece, Gwen Atkins, who has went out there to be with William and Sally. So if you continue to pray for them, we would certainly be grateful. A couple of other people. Miss Elaine shared with me that we'd like to pray for the father of her children and his medical condition. He has been hospitalized and is battling. So if you would lift him up. Also, many of you remember some members here, April and Tom Hinkle, and April's sister, Marianne, along with her brother-in-law, are both in TMH. They came in at two separate times. One happened to go in, I think, after a fall. I don't have all of the details, but I know that April would appreciate us lifting up her sister, Marianne, and her brother-in-law. In addition to that, Miss Christy Manzi is here, but she's still dealing with some pain in a leg and a hip. Prayers for Miss Christy. And there may be others this morning. I know that some of you are back after battling some COVID, like the Papka family. Miss Cecilia is here this morning. Some of you have been out for some sickness, but we are delighted to have you back with us this morning. Any others this morning? If so, make it known, please. Yes.
The last few weeks I've been asking for prayers for a number of my friends. I want to continue to do that, and their wives and significant others. And then this week I kind of need prayers myself. I'm having a pacemaker put in on Friday. They told me it's not too difficult of an operation after everything I've been through. I'm hoping that it will go very smoothly, but you never know. So just need some prayers. So that's this Friday. Thank you.
Thank you, Clark. Others today? All right, Mr. Alex.
Just a thing, my sister who lives in Maine, she had a broken hip. I think it was Tuesday, I believe, and she got surgery Wednesday morning. She's in rehab. Hopefully she'll do well, but having dementia, it's hard to keep her under control.
Tell us her name.
That's it. I call her Jeannie. A lot of people call her Grace.
Thank you. Any others today? Yes?
A coworker of mine has been having issues with swelling and hair loss and fingernails not being real strong or whatever. Went to the doctor, went to the nephrologist this past week, and found out that her body, her kidneys are not filtering any proteins, so she's just urinating all the proteins
Any others today? Yes, speak up.
Like I say, I'm praying for my dad, Wayne McCollum, he fell recently, broke his leg, he is in rehab here, hopes to be discharged in the next couple weeks. But my mom has been experiencing significant digestive issues, I don't know if you maybe managed to look at somewhere, but we're trying to get it figured out, so if you could have her to share with us as well. So Joanne McClellan.
All right. Holly's parents, Mr. and Miss McClellan. Speaking of parents, Doug, you want to give us an update on your dad?
Dad is improving gradually. He's still in the hospital, but he's under skilled nursing care now. So he's receiving occupational physical therapy. He's moving gradually with the walker. The mom's at home, very lonely and very weak still. She doesn't eat right.
Prayers for Ron and Beulah Oscars. If we could, I see one more hand. Yes, speak up, Laurel.
We have 6 people in our family that have COVID. My one sister and her daughter, her granddaughter, and her great-granddaughter, who's only a year old, had to go to the emergency room. She's home, but she's still fighting it. And then my other brother-in-law and our grandson, Jacob.
For the tribe of people in Laurel's family that are battling COVID. Any others? Let us go to our Lord. Able God, we are here sharing joys, good news, requests, burdens, needs. Confident that you are already aware and already at work. We are grateful. And we know that prayer changes things. Today we lift up all those that have been voiced, those listed in our bulletin, any that may develop this week. We lift up our city, state, nation, and world, our president, leaders all over, asking that they would seek your holy wisdom in decisions they make. We also lift up the people of the Ukraine, those places that are receiving refugees. We lift up the people in Kentucky as they are recovering from disaster in the form of flood. We are your children. You are our God. Together we come and we pray as we've been told. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. This time we're going to have some special music, and we're going to receive our morning tithes and offerings. doxology.
Mighty God, we have given back to you freely and quickly a portion of all that you have blessed us with, asking that you would bless both gift and giver. Take this, use it as you see fit to build your kingdom here and now. May it be so. Thank you, and you may be seated.
There are several youth here today that I want to say thanks for showing up. And they could have, as our next hymn says, fly away, but they were here for a lock-in. And Brian and Meredith were with them, and they survived. I'm not sure what time they left the building and returned, but we are grateful for their presence with us this morning. We are ready to sing a old favorite called I'll Fly Away. If you are able, stand and join us. Not altogether certain if they thought I was going to run away after Vacation Bible School or exactly why. There are some question marks in there. We have a text on the front page and a title. It's called Lasting Effects. Maybe the joke was on me. But our text this morning is from Luke's Gospel, and it is a parable about a rich person and how it is that perhaps there are implications for the way we as disciples in this world allocate, use, God's resources. And let's be clear, they are not ours. All that we have is a gift from God. And hopefully we will make choices that allow us to be good stewards of that. You can remain seated. We're going to read the text together. As I said, it comes from Luke's Gospel, and it is the 12th chapter. If you will, join me in reading God's holy and living word. May we begin. Someone in the crowd said to him, "Teacher, tell my brother to divide the inheritance with me." Jesus replied, "Man, who appointed me a judge or an arbiter between you?" Then he said to them, "Watch out. You know your power against all kinds of greed. Life does not consist in an abundance of possessions." He thought to himself, "What shall I do? I have no place to store my crops." Then he said, "This is what I'll do. I'll tear down my barns and build bigger ones, and there I'll store my surplus grain. And I'll say to myself, you have plenty of grain laid out for many years. Take it easy, eat, drink, and marry." This is how it will be with whoever stores up things for themselves, but who is not rich toward God. May God add blessing to the reading of His holy and living word. Mr. Brian was sharing that we don't keep secrets in the United Methodist Church, and at the same time, we live in a time in our culture where you have to be at least cautious about how you put information out, especially when it can wind up on the internet or the World Wide Web. But let us be clear that if you ever have a question about something we're doing here, especially that might have regard to money, speak up, ask. We're not trying to hide anything. I suppose in some ways, what Brian says is the head usher gets asked, how much did we take off? Is it enough? How are we running? I heard a preacher one time begin a revival with a statement. He said that all that was needed and necessary to keep the church and the ministry going was provided. And that he had some good news and some bad news. He said the good news is there's more than enough. The bad news is it's in your pockets. So you have to let go of it, if you will, for it to be enough and used. Most of you that attend here regularly don't know that or do know that I don't regularly talk about money. I'm not here to give you a financial seminar this morning. I'm here to think about how it is that a parable, a layered story that uses symbolism and allegory, is meant to be relatable to those at every level in everyday life, can give us some wisdom in our own life and situation this morning as we dig into that text and begin. Would you pray with me? Able God, open our minds, hearts, and spirits that we would understand fully this parable that we would know your word to be a living word, that we would also know your provision, generosity, your protection, the joy that comes with giving out of an abundance that we have been blessed with. Speak through me or in spite of me, but speak, Lord. May it be so. Amen. We have talked about kind of the mechanism in which this text is presented before. It's known as a parable. Some people say parables are kind of like onions. They have layers to them, and you peel back one thing and something else is revealed. Another thing that happens sometimes when you peel onions is you cry. That there is, if you will, a reaction to a reaction. It has layered meaning. Well, we are told about what the Bible calls a rich fool. A young man who has an abundance in yield from crops. Planted, harvested, more than enough for maybe himself and his immediate family. And what does he decide to do with it? There's so much that he needs to build a bigger barn, a place to store it, store more of it. And there is that temptation, if you will, to take what you have been abundantly blessed with and eat, drink, and be merry. Just go have some time of self-indulgence. But at the end of the parable, it seems that there is some advice for all of us to realize that we have a responsibility for each other and to share, and to do so not begrudgingly, but joyfully and willingly. Many of you know that I spent over 20 years in the retail arena before answering the call to ministry. One of the challenges that we often faced in a world that centered around profit and production per square foot and peaks of seasons was how to maximize the space that you had. Now, I worked primarily for two retailers. One called Parisian. Good group of people, proud of their merchandise. Started out being owned by a Jewish family. Eventually sold and went public. Then bought out. And then another retailer founded by a name you might be familiar with, but a man whose real name was James Cash. Started with one store in Wyoming, and then expanded. Got bigger. Well, there were some things that I learned in the retail business. Some advice I was given along the trail. One of those things, some retailers seem to emphasize and have learned early, and some still struggle with it. One is that it don't sell in the stock room. It sells on the retail floor. In other words, where you can get to it and touch it for yourself and try it on if need be. But it can be the best thing since sliced bread or bubble gum, but if it's in the back and nobody knows about it, its value is diminished. We had reports that came out regularly that told us an important figure, what our profit margins were. And as a buyer, my salary had a base and then an incentive or bonus based on profit margin. The more profit I made for JCPenney, the more increase I saw in paycheck. There's a difficulty with that. When you do something well and you do something right, you've got to beat it the next year. You know? It just keeps setting the bar. And then there's that whole thing called the calendar that Hallmark doesn't allow us to vote on. So what if this year there are 5 weeks between Thanksgiving and Christmas? But next year there are only 4. You still got to do that volume in a shorter period of time. You got to crank it out a little more each day. Things that challenge and manipulate us as to what our options are with resources we've been given. Let's move out of the retail arena and let's just think about church for a minute. Many of you have been here for a while. Some of you have been a part of this congregation much longer than me, and some are newer to us. One of the things that I believe is that all of this property on this busy corner at the intersection of Capitol Circle, that used to be called the truck route, and Mahan Drive, it used to be the Jacksonville Highway, is still all God's property. Not mine and yours. And one of the great things I want to celebrate about you, Tallahassee Heights, is that you are not stingy people with what God has provided. What do I mean by that? Well, if you don't know, let's just share a few things with you that are important about this place. In addition to things that might be classified as internal, there are 7 other organizations that we are partners with at different levels, times, and seasons that benefit from space on our property. They include things like Cub, Boy, and Girl Scouts. I can't keep up with all the NAs, AAs. there are support organizations that are centered around families and individuals who are battling addictions. Support groups that meet. We mentioned a prayer request earlier for William and Sally, an association for the blind that meets here. Somebody's probably saying, preacher, can't they meet somewhere else? Well, let me tell you why we agreed to allow them to meet in our fellowship hall at an average of once every 2 months. Because it may not surprise you when you think about it in a common sense way, the majority of people who participate in that don't drive. Shazam! Okay? So they rely on public transportation and someone else to get them to a meeting. And guess what? Star Metro and Dollar Ride know where the pumpkin church is. They bring people like scheduled at an airline terminal the day of that meeting. They start dropping them off about 3:45 for a 5 o'clock meeting because there's that many people that need the service. Now, do not fool yourself into believing that these individuals are helpless. I've seen the tribe, once they arrive here, shuffle over to Publix, led by somebody with a seeing eye. And what are they doing? They're going to get their dinner because it's going to be a dinner meeting. And they help and look out for one another. They return safely. And they have a fully functioning business meeting. There's the Humble House. Yes, they do pay our church a rental fee, but there's a lot that goes on there that is an exchange and a ministry together. Violet mentioned how those girls came over yesterday and jumped right in to help with all the activities of Vacation Bible School. Can I tell you that I have been a part of churches that tend to use the building 2 times a week, and that's it. And they keep it locked up tight. Because after all, those sinners outside the building might destroy it if they were to use it or benefit from it. As if we are sinless. You've figured out how to be generous with your resources, how to share, how to support others. There's a whole list of ministries that Elizabeth could probably call out by name, but I can tell you they're partners. They're people that are a part of a larger mission in Tallahassee, in the state of Florida, in the U.S., and beyond. And you're part of that, just like you're part of that children's home video. What do we know? Need doesn't have a season. There is always something going on that can benefit from our generosity. And you've been faithful over and over to give and to give freely. And sometimes a ministry will exist for a time and a season, and then another will come along. But your motto has not been, let's just take care of us and forget about the rest of the community and the world. You've been generous. You're to be congratulated. You're not being foolish, as the parable advises, for the selfish man who wanted simply to take care of his own needs and not respond to needs and opportunities around him. Often that generosity includes money, but sometimes it's a generous spirit. It's a caring attitude. It's a phone call. It's a card. It's a note. It's a ride. It's picking up something for somebody else and delivering it to them. Well done, thy good and faithful servants. Doesn't mean we can't improve. There's not opportunities we can't make better. It means keep on doing what you've been a part of and watching the blessings that result. May it be so. Today we have a meeting. It's going to talk about pumpkin patch. For those of you who don't know, this church has been doing it 35 years. 90% of the proceeds from the pumpkin patch get given away. We don't save it to paint the building, plant new bushes, or create a rose garden. We use it to serve other people. And to do so joyfully. We'll give you upcoming a list of who those ministry partners and beneficiaries are. But I want you to know that what you do makes a difference. Sometimes in more visible ways than others. But always making a difference. Because you're living and operating out of a sense of abundance, not scarcity. You realize what God has blessed us with, and you're ready to share it. My prayer is that we continue to know and be the disciples God calls us to, while giving Him